Reading for seekers of inspiration and spiritual empowerment. This series offers nourishment for those on a path of increased awareness at this challenging time. Inspired by higher sources of wisdom, Chronicles of Hope delivers messages to lift your spirit with a roadmap of hope and guidelines for living a life of expanded consciousness. The guides offer powerful insight for mental, emotional, and spiritual growth at this critical tipping point for humanity. The message is clear. We must change. We have the power to raise our vibrational energy individually and collectively before it's too late. I am Lois Herman, author of the best-selling Chronicles of Hope series and host of the Inspiring Hope radio show at WSMN.live or 95.3 FM. You can find me at loisherman.com or chroniclesofhope.net.
Welcome to Inspiring Hope with Lois Herman, a leading expert in professional coaching, clinical hypnosis, and energy clearing. Lois is an award-winning author of Chronicles of Hope. She has decades of experience in advanced hypnosis techniques, has conducted highly effective success coaching programs that have helped clients discover ways to achieve success, empower themselves, their families, as well as holistic practitioners to expand their practices. Get ready to be empowered with your host, Lois Herman.
Good morning and welcome to Inspiring Hope. I am your host, Lois Herman, and I'm here to inspire you with positive messages and celebrate people who are making a difference in our world. When we focus our thoughts and energies on truth, honesty, and integrity, we create powerful shifts that cause us to be more positive and peaceful. As we lift our energy, we empower everyone around us. If we each do what we can to make small shifts in awareness, we create ripples of hope. Join us as catalysts for positive change for our families, our communities, and our world at large. I hope you are inspired by today's show. And today, I want you to think about everything that's going on around us. Our world is changing before our eyes. We're dealing with war. We're dealing with divisiveness. And people are becoming more awake and aware of deception and lies. Our children are watching. They're watching what's going on and observing how we act and react to situations and can feel very overwhelmed. Children are our future. We must teach them well, as the song says, and let them lead the way. The world is ready, and the children are waiting to follow our lead. Today, we have an amazing guest who will discuss programs that empower and encourage children to be the best they can be. Are we shining the light of joy and peace for children to model, or clouding their judgment with fear, self-doubt, and division? Have they been masked to block their voice so they are seen and not heard? Or are we inspiring them to use their fresh, intuitive knowing to ask their never-ending questions, to explore the world with great curiosity? There are more questions to be asked that can ever be answered, and there are no right answers. The only wrong ones are to the questions that were never asked. What if our children had opportunities to learn about their innate spiritual connection with their brilliantly fresh minds and imagination? If they could connect with Mother Nature, explore astrology, and those things that parents delve into. What if they could discover the world of the unseen with their ever active imaginations? As our youth adopt practices to embrace the power of spiritual things like meditation, they can calm their busy minds and develop intuitive insight that will last their lifetimes. In my session work, many children connect powerfully with their spiritual self, yet feel alone among their friends. They have no one to talk with about their spiritual awareness or connections, which leaves them feeling very different and alone. Actually, they are simply awake and aware long before their friends. These are the children who need to be nurtured and encouraged. They are the starseeds, the way showers, who will bring insight to their peers, and they need to be supported in their mission. They were brave enough to be born at this time, and we should do whatever we can to help them tap into their gifts and achieve their potential. My guest today is an incredible woman with her own fascinating story who now dedicates her life to the mission of bringing spiritual awareness to children. Her Spirit Camp and Confident Kids programs introduce children to the unseen world and encourage their already tuned-in awareness. Through life experiences, Eva Goulette has answered the spiritual call to be the face and voice of this important work for our children and our future.
Minutes, 525,000 moments, oh dear. 525,600 minutes. How do you measure a year? In daylights, in sunsets, in midnights, in cups of coffee, in inches, in miles, in laughter and strife. In 525,600 minutes, how do you measure a year in the life? How about love? How about love? How about love? Measuring love. Seasons of love.
Seasons of Love. You are listening to Inspiring Hope with Lois Herman at WSMN.live or 95.3 FM. Help share the messages, watch the videos on our Lois Herman Associates YouTube channel and our loisherman.com website, and join our Hope community at chroniclesofhope.net. And today, I'm delighted to be joined by Eva Goulette. Eva, are you on the phone with us?
I am. Thank you
Good.
for that beautiful introduction, Lois.
Oh, good morning. I'm delighted to have you telling your story. It's a pretty fascinating story.
Oh, thank you. Well, it's a pleasure to be here.
Well, can you tell us? I've heard your story. I heard you present, and I when I listened to you, I thought I need to have you on the show to share your story with the world because of what you've been through, number one, and number two, because of what you're doing. It's so exciting. And can you please tell us a little bit about your background, what happened in your world?
Sure. I was living in Southern California, working at Disneyland in marketing special events and having a blast. I loved my job. And I ended up being involved in a head-on car crash on Pacific Coast Highway. And in that car accident, I received a traumatic brain injury that really altered my life and my future. And I needed to return to Maine, where I grew up, and live with my family and have my family take care of me for years.
Wow.
And it was about 8 or 9 years after the car accident when I actually moved into a place on my own and started living independently again. So it was a long road back. And after I started living independently and getting reestablished in living a life again, I started receiving messages at 3:20 in the morning that were sharing with me downloads of information about really fun ways. It started with teaching chakras to children.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know what to do with the information. At first I thought it was a symptom of my brain injury.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started receiving more and more and more information, always at 3:20 in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
So I started really paying attention and understanding that I felt like my brain had recalibrated itself as a result of that head trauma, and that I was receiving information in a way that I had never experienced before, but it was all brand new information. And I borrowed some of my friends' kids and started doing some of the curriculum that I had been receiving in these downloads, and they absolutely loved it. The parents loved it. So I just started gathering the information over time. This was over a few years as I was still recovering, and it became Dancing Jaguar's Spirit Camp, a way to help children understand the importance between mind, body, and spirit, and that we are made up of all three of those.
That is what an incredible story, a comeback, a survival story in and of itself, because so many people, when they have setbacks, they feel, okay, that's it, I'm done for, and they just give up. And you had that perseverance and determination to succeed and to just push through, which I think is extremely admirable.
Well, thank you. I feel like my life was designed in such a way that this was all meant to be, because every 7 years throughout my entire life as an adult, I changed careers, I changed locations, and all of those pieces of my 7 year cycles all merged together to be able to support me with the knowledge that I need to be able to bring this information forward in the world, from event production to fundraising to promotions, all of those different 7 year cycles. The skills I learned in each of those are coming together now to be able to help me with this mission that I have been asked to come forward with in the world, which is to teach Spirit Camp
And
to kids.
that is so true, because many of us have had different. I call it, I have different lifetimes in this one incarnation, but each one of them brings to the table skills. We have adopted skills from those different the different careers that we've had. So it's not like, well, I used to be this, I used to do that, but I am still me, and I'm bringing knowledge and experience from those different avenues of experiential learning into the now. So that's wonderful. And you also, can you tell about where you got the name Dancing Jaguars?
Oh, sure. In one of my first adult incarnations, I was, in this lifetime, I was a ballet dancer and teacher. And I had my own ballet studio in upstate New York.
Wow.
And dancing has always been a part of my life and something that I'm very passionate about. So dancing in my company's name is because that's a love of mine. Jaguar came from my power animal, who I learned about many years before I ever did any shamanic training. I met my power animal, the black jaguar, in an actual jungle in the Amazon. Is the first time it came to me in a vision. And the word inspirations came from me just wanting to be an inspiration to the children I work with. So I put all of those together and ended up with a company by the name of Dancing Jaguar Inspirations.
I love it. I love it. So you were actually in the jungle?
Yes, actually, I was in the Amazon a couple of times working with some shaman down there, and then I ended up actually living in the jungle on the border between Belize and Guatemala for almost a year. I just feel like I am of the jungle. That's where I feel most at home. I have no fear. I lived completely by myself in a one-room building on the top of one of the Maya mountains, and had to hitchhike 7 miles to get to the nearest village. So I have no fear
That is
in the jungle.
amazing.
It feels like that's my home.
Well, and you also, it sounds like you also lived in the jungles of New York City. That's a different kind of jungle.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, actually, that was upstate New York, but
Upstate
still, it
New
was
York.
in the
Okay.
middle of a city.
Yes.
Yeah, it was in downtown Syracuse.
Okay,
So
Syracuse.
still
That's
a concrete jungle.
yes, but very different than New York City. So, yeah. Wow. So, tell us about your company and the what it is, what Dancing Jaguar Inspirations is. I mean, you offer several different things, and I'm intrigued.
Oh, thank you. Yes, we offer numerous programs and products, and we are constantly expanding those because our mission is really to support the spirit of the child.
Mm.
So our main product service that came about as a result of my brain injury was Dancing Jaguar Spirit Camp.
Mm.
And that's a 5-day summer camp program for children where they are immersed in all kinds of spirituality concepts and metaphysical tools. They learn about shamanic journeying and how to work with spirit helpers, especially their power animal, which is huge for kids.
It is.
And then they learn about their chakras and auras and how to work with them. And they learn about using gemstones and crystals and their healing properties, how to use pendulums and dowsing rods, muscle testing, aromatherapy, working with a lot of inner work in terms of identifying their inner critic and their inner champion in their inner dialogue, and learning mindfulness techniques to help them self-soothe when they're feeling anxiety, how to move energy in their body. And then the icing on the cake for me is on the last day of Spirit Camp, where they connect energetically to the natural world. And to me, that is giving children an experience that most children don't have, because these kids go out and, having experienced working with energy throughout the course of the week, we're learning about chakras and auras and sensing other people's energy in the classroom. When we go outside and they actually start experiencing what the energy of a tree feels like, and the
Yes.
aura of that tree, and then asking the tree if they can meditate with it and receive a message from the tree. And there are really profound messages that small children, 5, 6, and 7 years old, are getting from the trees. So when children are able to have an experience like that at such a young age, I feel like they're really embodying the wisdom and the knowledge to understand the phrase, we are all one, or we are all connected, because otherwise those are just words to most kids, but these children actually experience it. So I feel that they will end up growing up with a reverence for Mother Nature that goes much deeper than a lot of children experience, just because of that experience they've had in Spirit Camp, where they've really communicated with nature in a very different way.
That is so empowering for children. I know of many adults who are hungry to learn about chakras and energy. Can you imagine? Well, you've experienced it. Children, if they learn it so early, that really will affect their entire life trajectory. I know that I started down this path because I had a 7-year-old who was seeing spirits, and I had been told to avoid negating what she saw, that she had a gift. And so I was curious about it, but I knew nothing. And since her experience, it led me down this path of discovery. So these children that are very much aware and awake, the ones that have the imaginary friends, that basically they're truly seeing the spirit world, be it a leprechaun or a jaguar or a mama bear. They see them, they feel them.
Absolutely. And because so many parents were excited that their children were being supported by this education they get at Spirit Camp, but they wanted it for themselves. So we have evolved and continued to grow. And as children age out of the younger children's Spirit Camp, we're creating Spirit Camp for teens.
Nice.
And we also have Spirit Camp for adults. So we'll be able to cover all age groups. And also something that's really I'm looking at doing in the future is creating a family retreat where families can come all together and go through Spirit Camp together. Because if no one has ever heard the information before, it doesn't matter what age group you're in, it's new material to you. And whether you're an adult who's experiencing it with your children or you're the child, all of us have an inner child that really needs to be nurtured as we're learning this stuff for the first time with our children. So it becomes an opportunity for all ages in a family to come together and experience Spirit Camp together and learn and grow and learn how to support each other, because children end up becoming partners in the holistic well-being of their family once they've gone through spirit camp. I have this wonderful story of a 5-year-old who went through spirit camp, and a few months later her mom came home from work exhausted. And the 5-year-old went up to her mom and said, "Mom, what would you like me to align your chakras before dinner? I think it would help you feel better."
Oh, is that amazing?
It's amazing. And that's when that mom said to me, "Oh my gosh, not only am I impressed that my daughter remembered how to do that, but I realized that it's not just my husband and I who are in charge of the well-being of our family. Our 5-year-old can
Hmm.
actually participate in helping all of us be the best we can be." So it really even changes family dynamic when children go through spirit camp, because they are so empowered and confident with the wisdom and the tools that they've received.
And I could only imagine that here's a child learning, and they come home and the parent doesn't know anything about it or not as much. So then the child becomes the teacher, where
Hmm.
I think the idea of having the family learning together is even more empowering. That's amazing. What a great gift.
Yes, and getting back to like all of the services and products we provide as a result of teaching spirit camp, some of the games and the materials that we use in spirit camp are products that are available to the general public now on our website.
Hmm.
And we're introducing a brand new product on the spring equinox of this year called the Confident Kids Toolbox.
Okay.
And it's a subscription box series that parents can opt into for their children. And at the turn of each of the signs of the zodiac throughout the year, starting with Aries in March, the children will receive a box with an attribute theme for that month. And most of the materials in the box will pertain to that theme, and the children will receive a gemstone that connects to that attribute. They'll receive an astrology card of the month that describes how that attribute ties into that astrological sign,
Hmm.
and then they'll receive an herb of the month, and they'll learn on the new moon and the full moons, which are spelled out for them in each box, how to
Wow.
use the herb of the month in ceremony or ritual.
Yes.
And there's an activity book in each box where the children will get to explore a little deeper some of the
Yeah.
qualities of that attribute and how to incorporate them into their lives on a daily basis. So there's so much in these little boxes that will come every month
Hmm.
for a year for each child as they explore astrology, gemstones and crystals, different attributes. It's very powerful for a child, and it's Christmas in a box every month.
And when you think about the indigenous people, you look at the Mayans. They created huge structures based on the astrological signs. They used the day, astronomy and astrology to plan what to do, when to do it. And a lot of that has been lost over the years. So I love that you're bringing that back in a very practical way for our children and our families and the child in us, so that we can take a look at, okay, this is a month of expansion, of growth, and instead of fighting it, getting into the flow with it and understanding it. So I think that's fabulous.
Yes, and you're right. I think that this is great information that has been lost to a lot of people for generations, and
Hmm.
bringing this back into the hands of the children is, I think, only going to help us as we move forward in the world, and these kids grow up into adulthood with wisdom and knowledge that
Hmm.
children are typically not exposed to at a
Right.
young age. So this is really exciting to me, and the message that I keep hearing, which I heard you mention in your introduction, is the world is ready and the
Yes.
children are waiting.
Yes. That is your message, and I use that for you. Yes, I love it. And the world is ready. The chronicles, the messages that came to me is the world is at a tipping point, and we're on the edge, and it is ready. And they have said, my guides have said time and again, you must get people to return to the native ways. to honoring the earth, to honoring all things of the earth, and to recognize that we are one. The energy we feel in the earth is the energy, the collective energy of all of our spirits, our collective energies. So as we explore and grow and learn, we can help to shift and lift the energies. And one of the things that you mentioned just in passing a minute ago, but I really keyed on in your presentation, was the inner champion. I've had a lot of experience with the inner critic. I've had a lot of inner critic dialogue in my life, but I never had what I would consider an inner champion. And until I heard that from you, and now I have an inner champion that speaks to me, or I acknowledge him. It's Archangel Michael. I have a very direct communication with him, and I can really feel and sense when he's communicating with me. So I love that. Can you go into how you go into inner champion and inner critic?
Oh, absolutely. The first time I did this module with kids was my first spirit camp of the year of the summer in Roanoke, Virginia. And I shared it's a very fun meditation, guided meditation for children where, they use a little miniature drone, and they have a remote control in their hands, and the drone is really, really tiny, and it goes into their ear, and it starts exploring all the corridors in their brain until it finds the control center. And that is where they meet their inner critic. And they come back from that experience and draw a picture of their inner critic. And if they choose to, they can write thought bubbles around that drawing that share some of the typical things that their inner critic says to them. And then later on, we do another guided meditation, very similar, where the child is introduced in that control center in their brain to their inner champion. And then they draw a picture of that person and some of the things that they hear that person say. Well, with the inner champion, one time, I think it was in that camp, or one right at the beginning of when I started doing this work, a little child said, I discovered my inner champion is my grandfather who died before I was even born. He's the one that says, you got this, champ. You can do it. So this child had this beautiful connection with an ancestor who he had never met, and he identified as being the voice that's always positive and cheering him on and supporting him. And then the other side of that is in that very first lesson that I did this, the very first camp that I did this lesson in, a child showed me a picture of her inner critic, and her inner critic at 7 years old was already brutal, saying things like, "You're not good enough. You'll never be as good as me. Nobody will ever love you. You're ugly." Just really, really intensely critical things. And I knew the mom, and I knew the mom had her own spiritual path and would probably be open to having me share that picture with her. So I emailed her and asked if she would be open to receiving that email of her child's picture to open up a conversation about it. And her feedback to me after seeing the picture was that it would forever change the way she was going to be parenting her children, because she doesn't say those words to her children, but she is a yeller. And if the words that are written on that paper are words that her child is hearing when she yells, then she said that will forever change the way that I speak to my children, because she was just like so heartbroken with recognizing how critical her daughter's inner dialogue was. So she promised that the next year, when we did that module at Spirit Camp, I would see a very different drawing from her daughter. But that was the year that the world shut down in 2020. So I haven't seen her daughter since then. But I am hoping that did help the mom. And since that module and that experience with that particular mom, I share that module in parent workshops that I do.
Yes.
I teach professional development classes for teachers. I present at education symposiums and conferences. And I always share that because I feel as an adult who loves children and wants to support them as much as I can, if I can help identify the children who are really experiencing intense inner critics
Mm-hmm.
at a young age and start working with them to help them learn tools to be able to, what I call, turn down the volume of their inner critic and turn up the volume of their inner champion. We can be supporting children years before they become teens and start having mental health crises because they haven't learned yet that the thoughts that they're thinking are not who they are. So I really feel like we could be setting kids up for success in their teenage years, or more success in their teenage years, by giving this information to them when they're really young so they can start exercising those muscles of knowing how to work with that inner negative voice and turn up the volume on their inner champion so they can start creating more loving self-talk for themselves as they're growing up.
That is so critical. I do a lot of regression work in the work I do with adults and children, and many of them go back to when they're 2 or 3, and they're hearing their parents and feeling what's going on, and they think it's their fault. So if
Mm-hmm.
parents are arguing, the child will inadvertently think that they have done something wrong when it has nothing to do with the child, but the children are observing, they're taking it all in. And then that inner dialogue, what they hear on that outside, they take that in and that becomes their dialogue. And I do a similar type of go in and rescue that child, give the child, this is in a trance type session, change the story. Change the story, recognizing that that child is not the child's fault, having them change and empowering them with positive, empowering them with positive energy, and shifting their internal narrative, giving them tools. And then when they come through the years with those tools in hand, it changes their perception of self. But
Mm-hmm.
9 times out of 10, the what we call in hypnosis the initial sensitizing event happens before the age of 3. And so whatever happened with a child, be it something that they heard, they sensed, they felt, that had nothing to do with them, but they experienced it, it imprints in their own sense of self, and it replays over and over and over. So I admire
Mm-hmm.
what you're doing with the children, because if we can teach them young, give them the skills, the tools to shift that, it will change that person's lifetime.
Absolutely. And I was just guided to share another story just about how children can actually impact the world with little simple tools too, because there was this child who contacted me months after Spirit Camp ended, and he was getting in trouble at school because he was sticking his tongue out to another student in the classroom, and he was getting caught and getting sent out into the hall. And he called me and said that one of the breathing techniques he learned at Spirit Camp, he thought might be a good thing for him to do when he's standing in the hallway.
Mm.
And that breath that I teach them is called peace breath, where
Okay.
they cup their hands like a bowl in
Mm-hmm.
front of them. And we ask them to picture themselves holding Mother Earth in the palms of their hands.
Mm.
And then taking a deep breath in and filling up their heart chakra with love. And as they exhale, whisper the word peace, and they will be sending
Nice.
peace all over Mother Earth. But
Wow.
then the second time they do that breath, I ask them to think of someone they're in conflict with.
Mm-hmm.
And when they whisper the word peace the second time, to envision that person in the palms of their hands. And that peace energy that they are sending to that person can influence whatever conflict or charge is in that situation, in that dynamic between them and the person that they're thinking about. So this child who was, I don't know, 8, maybe 9, said, if I do peace breath when I'm standing in the hallway and put this other child in the palm of my hands while I breathe the word peace, do you think that will help our relationship? And I
Wow.
realized that that child was making a connection to something he learned in spirit camp, and he
Yes.
was actually using it in his life to help resolve or soften the impact of a conflict he was having repeatedly with a child in his classroom. That's the kind of stuff that I think is going to have a lasting impact on our world, is when children utilize their tools to be able to help themselves deal with situations that are going on in their life on a daily basis.
And when they take those tools and they modify them, because children are creative enough to really integrate it and then modify it to fit them. Many adults are, well, now tell me exactly what I have to do. And
Hmm.
children are creative enough to go, oh, let me use it this way. And that's what needs to happen, is to be able to integrate, take a learning, a lesson, and apply it for their life. Then it shifts, and it's again it's that ripple that shifts and moves out, and people can apply the lessons in their own way, in their own style, their own language, and their own sense of self, which is amazing.
Exactly. And then, may I share one more story
Oh,
about
please,
how
please,
a
please.
child,
Yeah.
okay, how a child took a teaching and made it her own.
Yes.
Um, at Spirit Camp, we teach the children how to move energy out of their body, and it's a long teaching about transmuting energy, but we have kids just focus on this yucky energy that's in their body, and
Mm-hmm.
they blow that energy into a pine cone, which we will share, not share, we will offer to the fire in a fire ceremony
Mm-hmm.
later. So it's a very sacred teaching that we're doing with the kids. Well, there was a child who was around 11 when she came to Spirit Camp, and she was already starting to cut as a
Mm.
coping mechanism.
Yes.
So her parents and her therapist thought it would be really important for her to come to Spirit Camp to get some tools. And she was a part of that exercise where she blew this yucky um, feeling in her body into the pine cone, and we offered it to the fire in a fire ceremony. Well, the day after that happened, this child's grandmother had a stroke, and
Mm.
she was not going to survive it. And the mom texted me that she was concerned her daughter was going to start cutting again. So I said, remind her of her tools in her toolbox, and I'm here. Just have her call me if she wants some help.
Sure.
And the mom emailed me the next day that she was writing through tears because her daughter had come to her the night before and said, we need to do a fire ceremony for grandma, and all of us
Wow.
need to write letters to her
Wow.
and read them around the fire, and then we'll burn the letters, and the fire will transmute all of the energy of the letters, and the
Wow.
smoke will carry our words up to heaven.
Mm-hmm.
So when she dies, she'll have letters waiting from all of us.
Oh, that is so
And
beautiful.
the mom said she realized right then that her daughter was going to be okay
Mm-hmm.
because she had tools, but she also could take those tools and adapt them when she was facing challenges in life. So she really did walk away from Spirit Camp with a spirit toolbox full of knowledge and wisdom and tools that she could use whenever she needed them moving forward. And Spirit Camp really did turn around that child's life. She started school in a completely different emotional and mental place, and was able to find another group of friends instead of the darker
Mm-hmm.
friends that she had been hanging out with
Yes.
at the end of the previous school year. It just really changed her life and put
Yeah.
her on a completely different trajectory.
One of the things that my guides and I have communicated with is there used to be what were called rites of passage, whereas children mature to different levels, there is a celebratory ceremonial passage, and it sounds like you include that somewhat in your spirit camp. So it just in that ceremony of learning of sending this into the fire, that is a form of passage of awareness building, and it basically helps the child to evolve to a different level of maturity.
Absolutely, yes. without a doubt. So what happened as a result of me developing Spirit Camp and sharing that in live camps, and then developing the Spirit Camp for teens and adults, throughout all of that, the world shut down and I needed to learn how to teach everything online.
Right.
So that was a huge learning experience. But then I realized I could be teaching other people how to do this work with kids on a virtual platform.
Right.
So that's where everything shifted for me once 2020 came and we were in lockdown. Is I started learning technology and learning how to bring this work to other adults around the world, because the message I kept receiving from Spirit was the world is ready. Well, I was only meeting with people, in very small groups, like 10 or 15 people at a time, and there was no way I was going to reach all the kids in the world doing that. So the brilliance for me, the silver lining for me with the world shutting down is that I was really forced to learn how to teach virtually, and now I see the complete wisdom in that, because now I can move forward and work with people in other countries so they can bring this work to the children that they are involved with in their lives.
So you teach the Spirit Camps for children. You also teach it for teens, and you teach it for adults. You also train trainers. Is that right? You have a whole different program for teachers.
Right. And that's the one that is the one that I had to learn how to teach online, is how to train other people to do this in virtual programs. So it's a 6-day training program online. So I usually do it like on a Saturday and Sunday, one weekend a month for 3 months, and then people become certified to be able to teach Spirit Camp with the children in their community.
Wow. Now, how do people find you? I know we still have a little time, but how will people find you? How do they find how to do any or all of these programs?
The website is dancingjaguarinspirations.com, and right on the home page, you have an option to go to Spirit Camp, to our online store to see our products, or go to Spirit Camp teaching. Spirit Camp training, and you can find all of the information for the upcoming Spirit Camps in 2022 over the summer, and in where all of the virtual and live teacher training programs will be this year. And our next virtual training starts on April 30th, and registration is open for that. And then I have in-person trainings in Portland, Oregon in July, and just outside of Portland, Maine in August. And those two events in Portland, Maine and outside of Portland, Oregon, I'm going to be doing a teacher training program for 1 week, and then the next week it will be followed up by a Spirit Camp. So those teachers who are there with me in person doing the teacher training program have the opportunity to stay for the next week and do an internship with me, where they get to experience teaching under my mentorship, parts of Spirit Camp. Or if they don't really want to do teaching yet, they just want to watch, they can watch me and support me as an assistant as I'm teaching the Spirit Camp to children. So I call those the immersion experiences, where people can spend 2 weeks really doing hands-on work to understand the depth and the importance of this from all angles. And then they are ready to just take the ball with it and run and carry it to as many children they can.
Oh, that is just amazing. I love the whole concept, because the children, they just need our support so badly. They always have. And in the Native cultures, it was the grandparents that looked after the children for the most part, because the adults were busy, cooking and doing the different, hunting and the different things to maintain a living. But it was that grandparent, that wisdom of the ages, that really tended the children. And it was so hands-on. Their life was all about exploring nature and really understanding life through the eyes of the energy of nature, of oneness. Beautiful.
Absolutely.
Just love it. And what do you recommend to people in this crazy day that we're living in? What do you recommend to stay upbeat and inspired?
Oh, follow their joy. That I think is so important. Following my joy keeps my vibration high. And when I'm doing something that gets me really frustrated or something that I'm not enjoying, I have to reframe it
Mm-hmm.
to what is going to bring me joy right now. And I I might need to take a break from something for a few minutes
Mm-hmm.
and just do something that brings me joy, because that shifts everything when one follows their joy. So even when I'm making decisions going forward in my business or in my personal life, if I'm looking at a situation and I'm trying to assess the pros and the cons, I also add to that which one is going to bring me the joy that I want to experience as I'm moving forward. And that is a part of all of my decision making now. Follow my joy.
That's wonderful. That is a great thing to add when you're making decisions. What will bring me
Mhm.
joy, and also what might bring another joy. Because a lot of
Mhm.
times when we're on purpose, um, part of what our job is to help bring joy awareness to others, and that could be part of that intention for the day is to bring me joy, and may I bring joy to another. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, I feel like when I am in my joy, it's sort of like put your own oxygen mask on
Mm-hmm.
first.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm in my joy, it automatically spreads. That energy is contagious. Joyful energy is contagious. It's like sharing a smile.
It's so
Once you
true.
smile, it's like the ripple effect.
Yes.
So I can bring joy to others much easier if I find it in myself first.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And it's there. It's there. We have to sometimes look through all the clouds and the smoke and the drama trauma, but we can find
Mhm.
that joy if we choose to look. Sometimes it takes a little bit of courage to look into it and then discover it, and we come out wearing our joy, being that joy. So,
Absolutely. Yep.
what inspired you to do this? I know you had that terrible, terrible accident. There, you had another story though that you shared with me about inspiration. What inspired you to get on this path?
Oh, well, in my 20s, I was living on the coast in um, the San Francisco Bay Area. And I read the Carlos Castaneda series of books, and that was such an inspiration to me. It opened up the world of spirituality and spiritual development and self awareness in a
Mm-hmm.
way that I had never experienced before. And I lived in a place that was right on the water, and to the right of my home on the ocean was boulders just as far as I could see, but on the left was beach as far as I could see. So it was really fun for me. After a period of time, I could assess how I felt internally by which way I wanted to take my walk in the morning. Like in one of the Carlos Castaneda books, the main character would run on boulders to teach himself to really trust his body, his instincts, his intuition, and know that his body would always support him. So he would run really fast on boulders, and just know that he would not fall. His feet would find the correct placement as he was running really fast. And that's what I started doing. I started running the boulders to the right of my home. But then sometimes I noticed that, I wasn't up for that, and I would go walk on the beach. And I started being able to assess how I felt at the start of each of my days. If I turned right to run the boulders, it meant that I was really feeling like I was in my power.
Mm-hmm.
But if I went left and walked on the beach, I would realize that I was feeling a little less in my power that day. And it was just an interesting thing for me to observe about myself
Mm-hmm.
as I was starting each day.
And
So
maybe
it
you
was a
needed
little,
nurturing when you were walking the beach. You were needing to be
mm-hmm,
nurtured by the water and the sand and those were nurturing days. And that's our cycles of life are rhythmic. And some days we
mm-hmm.
do feel so much more powerful, and other days it's like I just want to retreat under my shell.
Absolutely. So that's where I started really learning to pay attention
Yes.
to my inner world and how I was showing up in my outer world. So that was in my mid 20s, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've had like a lifetime. I'm decades older now. I've had a lifetime of really learning and exploring my inner world. And I think just doing a lot of healing work and doing shadow work.
Right.
And I think that just put me into a place where I became like a, a vessel for spirit to work through to be able to bring this work forward, because I not only had all of those 7-year blocks of time where I was gathering the skills that I needed, but I also had for decades been doing lots and lots of my own healing work. So I think when it came time to bringing this work through for the children,
Mm-hmm.
I just ended up being in the right place at the right time to be the vessel for this work.
And you can dance your Jaguar of inspiration, which I
Yes.
just think that is so, what a great name. What a great name. And I'm sure the children
Oh,
love it. So,
oh,
and do
they
they
do,
dance at
definitely.
camp? Do you actually have some kinds of dance in your spirit camp?
Well, we have the children invoke the energy of their power animal as they
Ah,
are entering our closing sacred ceremony for the week.
yes. Okay.
So at that point in time, yes, they are able to dance their way into our closing ceremony, and it's
Yeah,
really sweet to see
it
how they
is.
really embrace the energy of their power animals to come into sacred space.
And how they're free to express themselves
Hmm.
without inhibition. You know, that I'm sure as they go through the week that they lose more of the inhibition as they get comfortable with each other. How many students are typically in the spirit camps?
Um, First year camps, because this is a whole new thing and people don't know what it is. So the first time I go into a city, they're usually small, six
Mm-hmm.
to eight kids
Okay.
for the first year.
Mm-hmm.
But then word of mouth spreads. So
Yeah.
by the time I'm in a situation where I've done a camp 3 years in one community, it's usually I have to limit the camp to 20 students, and I end up with a wait list.
Wow.
So yeah, it's
This is why you need
a
additional teachers.
Oh, absolutely. And I want to go back to, if I may, for just a moment,
Sure.
talking about how the kids end up finding other children. They're networking with each other now. They
Yes.
know that there are other kids out there like them,
Mm-hmm.
or kids that see spirits, or kids
Mm-hmm.
that can see auras, kids that are
Yes.
empaths and can
Yeah.
sense the energy when they walk into a room. All of a sudden, they're being exposed to other children like them.
Yes.
So these kids are building a network with each other. And what's really nice is through the pandemic, I continued to support children virtually. And some of those kids have become like really, really close friends with children who have been in class with them virtually. You know, and the parents have reached out and said, you know, my child would like to connect with so and so's child. Will you ask them if it's
That is.
okay with them? And so now these kids are meeting outside of classes, having
Yes.
Zoom rooms with each other, and
Yeah.
it's so wonderful to help these sensitive children create their own network, because as adults, I need that in my life.
Exactly. Ava, we
Yes.
are we are all but out of time. So thank you so much for the work you're doing. Thank you for sharing and for working to help our children. And I agree, the children need each other. They need the support and they need each other. So thank you for your work. And
Thank you.
to our wonderful audience, until next week, look up, stay positive, and be the light in someone's day.